Imagine for a second you're standing on the bridge of a massive vessel, middle of the night, and chaos is absolutely erupting all around you.
Yeah, the alarms aren't just beeping.
No, they are screaming, that distinct, piercing, digital cry that just makes your stomach drop through the floor.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I want you to ignore the explosion.
Ignore the fire.
Exactly. We aren't talking about the flames today. We're going to talk about the silence.
The silence inside the minds of the people in charge.
That's it. We are looking at a really intense piece of training material today. It's titled Operator Training 2026 Module 4. And honestly, the subtitle alone is enough to wake you up.
It is. It's a forensic human performance analysis of the Deepwater Horizon disaster.
But here's the twist, and it is a big one. This wasn't written for oil rig workers. This module is specifically for nuclear reactor operators.
Which is a fascinating crossover. I mean, you might ask, what does an oil rig blowout in the Gulf of Mexico have to do with splitting atoms in a containment building?
Right.
Well, the answer is everything. Because this deep dive isn't about the cement job that failed or the blowout preventer that didn't seal, we are stripping all that away.
We're looking strictly at the human-machine interface, the HMI.
We are looking at what happens to a human brain, even a highly trained one, when decision-making just collapses under extreme pressure.
It's the stuff that keeps you up at night if you work in any high-stakes field. And the source material is brutally honest. It's for simulator instructors, for operations leadership.
And it challenges pretty much everything we assume about what makes a good operator.
It really does. It talks about how having a clean record might actually be a liability, and why the troublemakers on your crew might be the only ones who can save you when things go south.
It centers on this concept of building scar tissue. And to understand that, we have to start with the testimony from the Deepwater Horizon's captain, a man named Captain Kuchta.
Yeah, let's unpack this transcript. The source calls this section the anatomy of a freeze. So picture the scene. Investigators are grilling the captain about those critical moments.
Right.
They ask him, what's in the safety management system PowerPoint? A standard question, you'd think. And his answer.
I don't know. Sorry, I don't recall those details.
And it gets worse. They ask who had their hands on the joystick controlling the vessel.
I don't recall exactly.
Now, reading this cold, the cynic in me, and probably in you, thinks, okay, he's lawyering up, he's dodging.
Oh, of course. That's the first assumption. But the source argues something completely different, and this is so important.
What's the take?
The source says, Captain Kucha wasn't incompetent. He was in the 80%. This isn't a legal strategy. It's the biological reality of crisis.
The 80%.
Yeah, there's a statistic cited from John Conrad, who wrote Fire on the Horizon. He breaks down human reaction to catastrophe into 3 categories: 80, 10, 10.
Okay, lay that out for us, because those numbers seem pretty skewed.
They're the harsh reality of how our brains are wired. When the adrenaline hits and the brain is overloaded, 80% of people enter a biological shutdown. They freeze.
They just stop.
They literally cannot process information. They can't speak. They can't recall protocol. The source says they turn into furniture.
So when the captain said, I don't recall, his hard drive was literally blank.
Exactly. Then you've got 10% who panic. This is the counterproductive action group. They scream, they run the wrong way, they press buttons just to do something.
They make things worse.
So much worse. And then you have the last 10%.
The ones who act.
The ones who take rational, effective action. And the scary part here is that the captain, the man with ultimate authority, he fell into that 80% freeze.
It's the difference between classroom knowledge and crisis retention.
That's the perfect way to put it. And it gets even more specific. There's this detail about the EDS, the emergency disconnect system.
The big red button, right. The ultimate save the ship move.
The ultimate move. And the captain actually gave the order to activate it. So, on paper, he did the right thing.
Right.
But the investigator asked him, did you look at the panels at the time the EDS was activated? And the captain says, I did not.
He never looked. He ordered the most critical action and never looked to see if it worked.
And this is where the source holds up what it calls the nuclear mirror. Imagine a senior reactor operator, an SRO, shouting, trip, or scram, to shut down the reactor.
Yeah, you hit the button.
They hit the button. But they never actually look at the rod position indicators to see if the control rod's dropped. They never look at the power plot to see megawatts dropping to 0.
They just assume the button did its magic.
They assume the system caught the casualty. It's a fatal assumption. You have to verify the physics. If you don't see the amps drop, the action didn't happen.
This leads us into what I thought was the most surprising part of the whole analysis. It gets into the neurology of who handles this pressure well.
And it brings up neurodiversity, specifically ADHD.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting for anyone in leadership and, well, it's pretty controversial. The source compares a neurotypical brain to an ADHD brain in a crisis.
Right. And normally we think of ADHD as a deficit in these kinds of jobs, don't we?
Sure, trouble focusing on long procedures, restless, maybe hard to manage.
In a routine environment, sure. But the source explains that a neurotypical brain has a normal baseline of dopamine. When a crisis hits alarms, explosions adrenaline floods the system. For that brain, it causes a massive overload.
What's the freeze?
That's the synaptic jamming, the disintegration of thought. But the ADHD brain is fundamentally different in this context.
How so?
People with ADD or ADHD tend to have a lower dopamine baseline. It's why they might feel understimulated or bored during routine ops. They're the ones capping the pen.
Okay.
But when that massive dump of adrenaline comes during a crisis, it doesn't overload them. It pushes them up to normal clarity.
Wow. So the chaos actually normalizes their brain chemistry.
Precisely. The adrenaline that paralyzes the normal operator actually lets the ADHD operator suddenly see everything clearly. They lock in, the noise fades away, and they can see the path forward.
That creates a massive paradox for management, doesn't it? The source calls it the troublemaker paradox.
It is the ultimate leadership challenge.
Well,
The operator who's restless, maybe a little difficult during the 99% of the time when the plan is running smooth,
the troublemaker,
might be the only person capable of clear thought when the plant is melting down.
it asks the listener directly. Do you support the maverick, who is difficult in peace, but necessary in war? That is a tough question for a shift manager who just wants a quiet life.
It is. We filter for compliance. We filter for people who sit still and follow the checklist perfectly. But in doing that, are we maybe filtering out the very people who have the biological hardware to save the ship?
Speaking of filtering, let's talk about the paper captain versus the salt. The source uses this analogy of turning left.
This is a great metaphor. Imagine a captain with 30 years of experience. Perfect record, a clean record.
Sounds like the guy you want in charge.
You'd think. But in this analogy, for 30 years, every time he saw a storm, he turned right to avoid it.
Smart man, right? Keeps the ship safe.
Sure, until the day comes when he has to turn left, directly into the storm to survive. The problem is, he has never done it.
He has 30 years of tenure, but 0 years of experience in managed failure.
Experience is the accumulation of managed failures. If you have a clean record, it might just mean you've been lucky. The source argues Captain Kucha lacked mental plasticity. He couldn't adapt because he'd never seen a disaster on that scale.
There was a statistic about BP's engineering department that really drove this home for me.
The promotion statistic.
Yeah, that at the time of the disaster, everyone had been promoted within the last 6 months.
The dilution of experience. You look at an org chart and see titles, manager, lead engineer. It looks impressive, but they're all brand new to the pressures of that role.
The source then asks the nuclear operator to look at their own control room. Is your SRO experienced, or are they just qualified?
Oof, that's a sharp distinction. Qualified just means you passed the test. Experienced means you've been scared and survived.
And that leads to how we treat the scary moments that do happen, like that precursor event on the Deepwater Horizon from 2008.
The total blackout.
Right. The rig went completely dark, power lost, positioning lost for minutes.
Which in the maritime world is a huge, huge deal. But listen to how the captain categorized it. The investigator asks, it's serious, but it's a non-event.
And the captain says,
I would say it's a non-event. Clearly, no harm to environment, no harm to equipment.
because nothing blew up, it didn't count.
That is the textbook definition of the normalization of deviance. When you categorize a near miss based on the consequence, we got away with it, instead of the potential risk, your safety culture is rotting from the inside out.
The lesson for the listener is to own the non-event.
If you're in the control room and you see a weird transient, a pressure spike that settles, a valve that sticks for a second, and you dismiss it because everything is fine now,
You're setting yourself up for the same thing.
you have to log it, report it. It's a precursor. It's the system whispering to you before it screams.
But the problem is, often the systems themselves, all the technology, can work against us. The source calls it the technology paradox.
Right. I mean, what's the industry response after every disaster? Add more alarms, add more screens, add more automated systems,
More safety, right?
or more noise. The source argues operators are already struggling. Adding more technology just increases sensory overload. When the alarms are flooding in, you can't see the forest for the trees.
And there's that great quote, when the lights go out, you cannot read the PowerPoint.
That is the compliance is not competence argument in a nutshell. The captain knew the safety management system existed, but he didn't know the content. When the rig is burning, you can't pull up the PDF. You need fingertip feel.
Fingertip feel. I like that. It's the opposite of staring at a screen.
It is. It's visualizing the plant in your head. The source points out the Deepwater horizon didn't have a black box like a plane. We're relying on blurry human memory. If an operator relies solely on the screen, they're just playing a video game.
This brings us to my favorite analogy in the whole document, the sonar dome, the Navy story.
It's a perfect illustration of how we train for the wrong things. So, modern warships have these massive, expensive sonar domes on the bow, under the water,
Very delicate.
and multi-million-dollar liabilities. Now, there's a maneuver called emergency anchoring. If you lose power and you're drifting towards, say, a shoal, you drop the anchor at speed.
It stops the ship.
But the chain will almost certainly shear off that expensive sonar dome. So what do you think happens in training?
They don't practice it.
Never. Captains won't do it because they don't want to explain $1 million repair bill to the admiral, so they protect the equipment, but they fail to train the crew.
The result is, when a real emergency happens and they must stop the ship, they hesitate, they save the dome, but they lose the ship.
And the source asks, are instructors afraid to break the model?
We treat simulators like testing centers, not laboratories for failure. We want the crew to pass.
But the source is screaming, we must allow crews to fail catastrophically in training so they don't do it in the plant.
So for the nuclear operator listening, what is your sonar dome?
It's the radical action that saves the core but ruins the equipment. Tripping the reactor coolant pumps, isolating a steam generator till it boils dry. These are violent, destructive actions to the machinery.
But they save the public.
Exactly. If you're afraid to break the toy in the simulator, you will freeze when you need to break the plant to save the world.
This leads directly into the practical application section.
Yeah.
Building scar tissue. I love that phrasing. It means you have to get hurt, at least mentally, to get stronger.
You do. Simulator sessions shouldn't be check-the-box evaluations. They need to be laboratories for failure.
It gives some specific advice for the instructors, right? Identify the freeze.
Watch the eyes. That's what it says. Don't just watch the screens, watch the crew's faces. Who has glazed over? Who is staring at a panel but not seeing it? That's your 80%.
And for the operators, it goes back to trust, but verify.
Never assume a button press worked. It says, look at the flow, look at the lights, look at the amps. If you hit the trip button, don't turn your back. Watch the amps drop.
And know your controls in the dark.
Literally. If the control room fills with smoke, can you find the scram button? If you have to look for it, it's too late.
There's also a note here for leadership about the shadow of the leader.
This goes back to the command structure. You had the captain, but you also had the OIM, the Offshore Installation Manager. And the captain deferred to the OIM.
Sounds reasonable. Collaboration.
In a boardroom, yes. In a crisis, no. It created a diffusion of responsibility. No one knew who had the final say. In a crisis, there must be one clear voice.
Does your shift manager take charge, or do they wait for the plant manager to call in?
If they wait, you're dead. This all challenges the culture of what the source calls the perfection trap.
The idea that leaders have to have a near-perfect record.
So if you make a mistake, your career is over, which means nobody admits to mistakes. Minor errors get hidden.
Scar tissue over 0 errors. That is a massive cultural shift.
It is. But if you want true safety, you have to value the person who knows what it feels like to fail and recover more than the person who has simply never failed yet.
The source wraps up with a really heavy thought about experience. It says, experience is the only thing you can't download.
In an age of AI and digital manuals, that's the human truth. Captain Kucha had the license, he had the PowerPoint, but he didn't have the scar tissue.
So the mission for the listener, whether you're a reactor operator, a pilot, or just leading a team, is to go out and build that scar tissue safely.
Don't fear the freeze. Prepare for it. Push your training until you fail so that when the real thing happens, your brain recognizes the pattern.
The source leaves us with this final charge. When everyone else is panicking, the prepared mind looks like heroism, but it's really just a biological response built through failure.
That's the takeaway. Heroism isn't magic. It's preparation.
So are you building that scar tissue now, or are you just trying to keep your record clean? That's the question we're leaving you with today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Stay safe and watch the amps.
We'll see you next time.